Have you ever had a sweet 16 or quince or anything to celebrate your transition from childhood to adulthood? If you have, then you have partaked in a tradition that many Native American tribes have been doing for hundreds and hundreds of years. So this tradition is usually just celebrating one's transition from childhood to adulthood, and it's just a small celebration. But like I said, many of Native American tribes have been doing this for quite some time. Hello, my name is Stephanie Kennedy, and today we'll be discussing how the Apache tribe lived, a few of their chiefs and warriors, a traditional ritual that they take in, and we will end today by discussing the reservation they live on now. So a little bit of history about the Apache tribes. So the Apache tribes originally lived in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, but the American and Spanish settlers continued to try to take their land. The Apache tribes fought back, and this quickly made the settlers fearful of them. This is because the Apache warriors were great warriors and expert fighters. So the Apache tribes were nomadic groups. So this meant that they were continually moving. They were never settled to one place. The men in the group were hunters. They hunted antelope, buffalo, and deer, and they only hunted what they needed. The women were known as skillful providers. So they prepared the meat that the men brought home. They used the skin to make things, and they gathered fruits and nuts throughout the day, all while taking care of the children. The Apache didn't believe in one god. They believed in supernatural powers. So a few of them were the life giver, and that was commonly associated with the sun. The next was the changing woman, who gave eternal youth. And then the last was the slayer of the monsters, which is pretty self-explanatory. And then there was 4 important mountains to the Apache people. They were the Sierra Blanca, Guadalupe Mountain, Three Sisters Mountain, and Oscarilla Mountain Peak. And those were thought to represent the direction of everyday life. And religion of the Apache has changed throughout time. Most Apache are Christians now. So although their beliefs back then were a little bit different from ours now, it's still really interesting to learn about different cultures. So next we'll be going into their chiefs and warriors. So we're going to start with one of their warriors named Geronimo. And he was known for holding off the longest fight with the US. And he was well liked by many chiefs for his wisdom, but also because they thought that he had a supernatural power. They thought that he could see into the future, and that when he was walking, he didn't leave behind footprints. However, sadly enough, he had to surrender in 1886 with a group of 16 warriors, 12 women, and 6 children, and they all became prisoners of war. And for 27 years, Geronimo was a prisoner of war, and unfortunately, he passed in 1909 and was never able to go back to his homeland. Next is Mangas Coloradas, and he was a chief, and he was well liked because of his height and his natural ability to lead. He united Apache tribes to a revenge war. So the settlers had took some of their land and they wanted revenge, and they actually won that war and got that land back. But American settlers came back and started another war for that land. This was a really long war, and it started in 1846 and it ended up going for quite some time, and Coloradas ended up dying in that war in 1862. So the Apache were furious warriors, and they taught their boys at a young age how to become one. They also put their girls through a rite of passage. So this rite of passage is known as the puberty rite of passage, and it was a 4-day ceremony. So it consisted of family prepared feasts, dancing, singing, and blessings. And the ceremony was thought to be given by a woman known as the White Painted Woman. And they believed that this white painted woman had seen or was confronted by an evil monster, and she had sent her son to fight that monster, and he won, which gave freedom and a livable place for the Apache people to live. So she became a role model for many women. So throughout this ceremony, this young girl will be referred to as the White Painted Woman. They will not call her by her name, they will call her the White Painted Woman. And she will be dressed to resemble the White Painted Woman. So the ritual requires a special dress. And she will also be in a buckskin for a total of 8 days. She will have a servant or a attendant helping her drink water so that she doesn't spill water on any of her buckskin or her dress. And she's also not allowed to scratch herself because it will leave marks. They give her a tool that if she needs to scratch herself, she can scratch herself and it won't leave any marks. She is told not to talk much throughout the ceremony, only to take things in. She is allowed to talk a little bit, but not too much. And on the 4th day, they will celebrate her. There will be a lot of dancing and singing, and she will share her experience, and they will praise her, they will pray for her, and like I said, there'll be a lot of dancing and singing, and sometimes there will be gifts given to her. So the boys don't go through anything like the girls go through, but at a young age they are constantly hearing different things about their culture. Their fathers are like telling them a lot of stories about their culture, and their fathers will also put them to a test to test their strength. So one of the tests that the fathers put them through is they have to run up a hill and down a hill with water in their mouth, and they have to do it pretty fast. And the reason that they have water in their mouth is because where they lived, it was really hot. So if they were not to have water in their mouth and they were breathing through their mouth, they could die. So the fathers made them put water in their mouth so that they would breathe through their nose. And then another test that the fathers put their sons through was they had to attack a hornet's nest. And while attacking the hornet's nest, they were to scream, "Make us strong, make us strong." The Apache believed that if they lived through these tests, that they will become a well-fought warrior. They'll become a strong warrior. So I'm not sure if these rituals are still put in place today or if they're as crazy, or not crazy, like as big as they were back then. But the Apache do live on a reservation in New Mexico. But there are rules when going to this reservation. You are not allowed to have a snake with you or have anything that resembles a snake on when going to the reservation. And this is because the Apache do not communicate with the snake. They believe that is a bad omen. They also believe that the owl is a bad omen. So if you're wearing anything with an owl, or if there happens to be an owl by you while you're trying to go to the reservation, they will not let you in because it's considered to be a bad omen. You're also not allowed to have anything that's related to a bear when going to see the reservation. And this is because the bear is a highly respected animal to the Apache. So if you see any bear waste, you are not to touch it. And if you are to see a bear while you're at the reservation, you are to refer to it as my uncle or my godfather. And this is, or my grandfather, I'm sorry. And this is because, like I said, it's a highly respected animal and you are to tell it to go back to the forest where it's safe. So today we went over the Apache tribe's lifestyle, the chiefs, warriors, and the reservation. And not only is it important to learn about other cultures, but it's also pretty cool that the Apache's rite of passage for the girls is very similar to something that we see today. And I was really intrigued when I was researching the Apache tribes. The initial reason why I chose this topic was because my half-sister is half Apache, so we wanted to get a little bit of her background. And I thought that everything was really interesting, and my sister and I are planning on going to see this reservation in New Mexico. And I hope that all this information really intrigued you as well, and that you go and see one of the reservations. And thank you for listening.